Yes, I know, I'm not wearing makeup today. That's how you know I'm not AI. Hey, folks. So, before we get into this, a little bit of a heads up. Anybody who has been following the news might find themselves going, Vera, isn't this news kind of a couple weeks old? It is. Thanks for noticing. I've got a lot going on in July. And as a result, I am trying to get as much sort of done in advance as I can. And this was a topic that I wanted to talk about, but it does mean that there are going to be some things that come out that either don't have any temporal connection to anything and are more evergreen topics, but also that some things that come out might, be not the freshest news, but I need to get some stuff done in advance because otherwise my July is going to be a disaster. So I hope you'll forgive me for that. The other thing is, I don't expect this story to change much between when I'm recording it and when the video goes out a few weeks later. Although, knowing my luck, how much you want to bet there's a major development like 2 days before the video goes live, and that's what everyone expects me to talk about? That would be very me. But regardless, this has to do with court cases. Those are not the fastest moving things in the world, so I think I'm going to be okay. And this isn't really something where I think it would have been more valuable for me to jump on it right away, because I wanted to also think on it a little bit because of certain aspects. Because the headline is that Disney and Universal are suing Midjourney for copyright infringement. Midjourney, if you didn't know, is an image generation large language model AI thing. I think they also do video. There's only so much I'm willing to look into these things. Exactly what services they offer, I don't care. Especially after last week's video, my stance on AI should be incredibly clear. I don't support generative AI at all, in any shape, form, for any purpose. I don't, and I never will. If you need a rundown on that, I will put a pinned comment with links to two videos, one talking about the theft, then the one I did last week, which initially is talking about specifically something that Lucasfilm did, but then more broadly talking about why I will never back generative AI as a thing, no matter how you use it and no matter what. So if you need a rundown on that, check those videos. I'm not going to reiterate it all here. If I can help it, I don't know. I might ramble into that direction in any case, but there were a number of things about this that I found myself wondering, because yes, on the one hand, finally, one of the major copyright holders of, some of the biggest IP is finally suing one of these places that have been demonstrably scraping the internet for copyrighted material and using it to generate these images. I'm kind of surprised it took this long to happen. But then I started thinking about it and wondered, wait a minute, why did it take this long to happen? Because I think there's actually some reasons. Because Disney doesn't want AI dead the way that, say, I want AI dead. So if that was what they wanted, they would have filed this lawsuit ages ago. Oh, I am going to name Disney a bit more than Universal. Universal is in on the suit with Disney, but Disney's very clearly the bigger fish of those two. So I am largely just going to refer to Disney. So forgive me for that. But Disney doesn't want AI gone. They are going in on AI. They want to make use of it. Hell, just last week I talked about Lucasfilm, which is a subsidiary of Disney. So it's not something that they want gone, but I think they are starting to hit a point where if they don't find a way to get some control over it, it's going to cost them more than they gain. Because what they want from AI is the same thing that, all of the studios want AI for. It's one of the reasons it was one of the major sticking points in both the writer and the actors strikes that happened a couple of years ago. But they want to, I'm sure in their words, streamline or speed up the artistic process. And I'm sure they would pitch it as free up our artists to not focus on these little things that we can just have AI do, when the reality means that they will cut hundreds to thousands of jobs for everything that they can get away with. Special effects artists are probably the big one right now. If they hadn't had the strikes for writing and acting, those would be a massive threat too. And they still are to some degree. Like, it's not all clear there, but like they want to replace as many people as they can with AI, because that's going to save them a ton of money and potentially time as well. That's a little bit more up in the air. It depends on whether or not they take the outputs of these things just as is, or if they do a bunch of tweaking, at which point I'm not sure if it's saving that much time, but it is saving the number of people. Definitely takes way less people to work with an AI than it does to build something from scratch. So they want it. But when you're talking about somebody, especially like Disney, they are one of the largest IP holders for iconic characters and imagery in the world. Like, there's other studios out there for sure. Sony, there's Warner Brothers, but I think it's interesting that it's Disney and Universal in specific, because sort of the main thing that comes up in conversations from Disney and Universal about this filing is the citation of their iconic characters that are being recreated by these image generations. So in the case of Disney, that's the entire animated Disney canon, plus Pixar, plus Marvel, plus Star Wars. That's all really iconic stuff that they own. They don't want somebody else profiting off it. And in the case of Universal, they don't have as many things, but Universal does own DreamWorks. So that's Shrek. That's How to Train Your Dragon. And in terms of image generation, some of the most popular things to get outputted are variations on or recreations of or mockeries of things like Disney characters or DreamWorks characters. So it does kind of make sense, because you look at something like Warner Brothers. Yeah, they have, their DC lineup and things like that. But Warner Brothers as a company is also in a weird place right now. They're currently talking about splitting the company in two again after the merger that they did with Discovery. So like it's almost like they shouldn't have been allowed to merge in the first place. But they are not really in a position to be bringing massive lawsuits. And in terms of like the other big players like Sony, I don't think that like their stable of properties that they own are going to really lend to as much credence. Like Disney can basically point to anything that is recreated, Mickey, Donald, any Disney princess, any all of it, and go like, that's ours, and they are profiting from this. Now, there is a gray area that AI has been trying to get away with, because like arguably there's also a gray area in things like, say, custom artworks. If I were to commission an artist to give me a custom piece of art that makes use of a copyrighted character, that is of a certain degree of like somewhat iffy copyright, because they are directly profiting off of recreating it. But at the same time, it is being sold to an individual and not necessarily mass disseminated. The problem with AI is that they have scraped all this data that anybody can have access to. Anybody can just plug in a prompt and it spits out an output based off of scraping copywritten data. And like the fact that all this stuff is, made up of stuff that is meant to be copyright protected, and in the case of Disney, copyright and trademark protected, that's not up for debate. We know that for a fact. The CEO of Midjourney, in a conversation with Forbes a couple years ago, flat out said, oh yeah, we just did a big scrape of the internet. And when asked about the legality of that in regards to copyright, basically threw his hands up and like, you can't ask for copyright on everything that you find. Like, you don't even know where a lot of that came from. Basically saying, well, because we think it would be too hard, we should be allowed to get away with not doing it and just stealing everything. That's essentially the same argument that's been made over in the UK, where there is a company that, if I can find the quote, I'll put it up. But basically their CEO said flat out, we can't do business if we have to obey and respect copyright. And yeah, that's true. But that's kind of why Disney, because like I said, Disney doesn't want to get rid of AI. They want to use AI, but they want AI bent to their purposes. And right now, the lack of guardrails on AI use and development of AI tools means that their stuff is up for grabs, up with everybody else's. And Disney's never been okay with that. They are notorious for being as petty as suing a daycare for having a mural with Mickey Mouse on it. So, like, yeah, of course they're not okay with this. But again, I think they were hesitant to bring a lawsuit because they don't want to disrupt this entire thing so much that it kills it. Because that's kind of a risk that they're running, but I'll come back to that. The other question I found myself asking is, why Midjourney? Like I said, they're not the only one out there. Like, Midjourney is certainly one of the major ones. I think, the major players that we're talking about when we're talking about image generation and large language models right now, we're talking about Midjourney. We're talking about Stable Diffusion, which is owned by Stability AI over in the UK. And we're talking about OpenAI, creators of ChatGPT, amongst other things. But I do think there was strategy in the choice to go after Midjourney in specific. Stability AI, as I mentioned, is in the UK. And while that doesn't preclude Disney or Universal from suing them, it does complicate things, to sue in a country that has different laws. And also, the UK right now, it's pretty much a free-for-all in the US for a lack of regulation around AI. The UK, the government's actually getting involved in AI. They're starting to make use of AI in their school programs, and the BBC, which is connected to the government, recently put out this monstrosity claiming to offer a masterclass from Agatha Christie.
I am Agatha Christie.
No, you are not Agatha Christie. You need to burn. Burn in hell. God, that monstrosity is so offensive to me. But if you're going to go after AI, the current government, Keir Starmer, the prime minister especially, is really kind of leaning into not just failing to regulate, but actively supporting and propping up AI. So that might not be the best environment to try and sue a company like that. So, okay, US companies. Midjourney's not the only one. OpenAI is the other big one. Yeah, OpenAI might be too big a fish, though. OpenAI was founded by about a dozen tech millionaires, including some billionaires, including Elon Musk, and is currently has 49% ownership, is under Microsoft. And Microsoft has deep pockets. Usually when Disney goes after somebody over an issue like copyright or trademark, they can outspend them. Now, being able to outspend someone doesn't guarantee that you're going to succeed in court. It does tip the odds in your favor quite a bit, though. But with Microsoft deeply invested in OpenAI, they would no doubt help with any lawsuits that it needs to face to try and continue to exist. And I'm not going to, try and figure out whether or not Microsoft could afford to outspend Disney. Maybe they could, maybe they can't. But regardless, it would remove Disney's normal financial advantage. Hey, it's Fair from the Edit. I forgot to mention Google in this. Their VEO3 video generation platform is making headlines at the time that I'm doing the edit on this. But I would say that falls under the same category as why Disney probably wouldn't want to sue OpenAI. They wouldn't want to go financially toe-to-toe with Microsoft. They wouldn't want to do it with Google either. And not to say that there isn't some significant money behind Midjourney, but it's basically funded by one guy, the current CEO. It is not backed by a massive corporation like Microsoft the way OpenAI is. So I think that is what made Midjourney the preferred target. So we've talked about why Disney and Universal, and why Midjourney. And I said I would circle back to the idea of Disney kind of has to be careful about this because they might break the whole thing, and they definitely don't want to. All right, so let's talk about that because it has to do with the nature of taking stuff to court. There's a number of reasons why these sorts of disputes, copyright disputes, trademark disputes, frequently get settled. It's not just because it's faster. It's also because the consequences of going into court and getting an actual verdict are a lot bigger because court verdicts set precedent. Settlements don't. I've kind of talked about this before, of the fact that, when you get a copyright claim on something on your channel, if you try and dispute that and you try and escalate it saying like, no, I swear, like this is fair use or it's not, copyright or whatever, that YouTube warns you, like, you have to be prepared to defend this in court. Now, that alone scares most YouTubers off. But the few times that I have felt justified enough to actually click yes and move forward, every time I've done that, the other party backed off. And it's not because they think I'm right. They don't care if I'm right or not. It's because the risk for them for going to court is huge. If things like the use of clips in a review for fair use purposes actually went to court and they lost, that would basically tip everything against them for all future things of the same type. That would probably lead to YouTube fundamentally altering the way that it even has the system set up, because right now it heavily favors the copyright holders because they have all the money. But if the courts have precedent that is against them, they probably have to alter that system a bit. And so there's massive incentive for these companies never to have this thing actually get to a verdict in court. Because even if you think you're going to win, whether it's because you have a bunch of money or because you think you're right, when the consequences are so big if you lose, most of these companies would rather just not take the gamble. So, like, think of it this way. These corporations, someone like Disney, suing over something like copyright when it comes to AI, if they go to court and they lose, that basically obliterates copyright as we know it. It completely reshapes and reframes what gets copyright protection and how you're able to enforce that. And Disney especially really banks on holding a tight grip onto its intellectual properties. And it would be a massive blow to everything they are if copyright protections got significantly weaker because of a loss in court over something like AI scraping copyrighted material. Now, do I think they would actually lose? No, I don't. Most times that this has gotten into courts, it hasn't gone in favor of AI by and large. Now, not that many things have gotten to court, but the few times it's come up, at least in the US, the courts have not really been persuaded by the arguments of these AI folks, which is, again, a reason to settle and not let it get that far. But the thing is, regardless of how likely they are to win, that's still a huge risk. And it's one most companies don't want to take, no matter how certain they are that they'll win. Like, think of it this way. If you had a bowl of 100 jelly beans in front of you, and you were told one of those is poison, only one, real slim chance if you go in and take a jelly bean that you'll get the poison one, really unlikely. You're probably not going to risk it though, because even though the odds of you getting the poison one are really slim, the consequences are so huge, you wouldn't risk it even though the odds are heavily in your favor. Same basic principle. And I think this is part of why Disney and Universal didn't file a suit like this sooner. They probably also aren't going to be happy if it gets to court and they win, because a major win in court is going to kind of break the way these large language models are built. And like I said, Disney wants to make use of this tech. But as I said, I think they've reached a point where they don't want to break it. They don't. They want it bent to their purposes. But they can't just let it be a free-for-all the way it's been up to this point. It's going to cost them too much to continue having this happen. So if they win, though, there is a potential to just break the profitability model of these AI companies. Because, they are selling their technology to companies like Disney and Microsoft, basically on the promise of saving them money. Look, you don't have to hire 100 people to do this, rendering of an effect or this coding or this writing. You could just license this AI. And these companies want that. But there is hitches on the profitability of this. Right now, the major expenses of running an AI for image generation and things like that are the initial development of it, I have no idea what that costs. Like, I'm not even in a position to start to guess what that costs. But the major ongoing cost is server costs. And I kind of addressed that in the video I did last week. The servers for these things go through incredible amounts of energy. They have to hoard water. As a result, they are contributing to the destruction of this planet by accelerating climate change. I know I said I wouldn't get distracted by that again, but like, I'm not going to let that go. That's why it's never okay. I don't care what use case you have. It doesn't justify contributing to climate change this goddamn much. Or really at all, but like, especially not that. But anyways, their major expense is server costs. Now, let's go back to what the Midjourney CEO said to Forbes. Basically saying like, it's too much work for us to try and get permission from all the copyright holders. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. They could. It would take a significant amount of time, work, man hours, and it would slow down everything they do. And those things might remove the profitability. The way they're able to at least even claim profitability, because these are private companies, they don't have public filings. Who knows if they're actually profitable or not in their current model. But if they are, it is on the basis of what it costs to run the server farms is less than what they are getting from licensing out the ability to use the higher end versions of these things. But if they have to add on the cost, the time, the delay of having to get permission, and then anyone who doesn't grant permission having to scrape that out of the data set to have to go in and remove it and prevent it from ever being taken in again, that's going to up cost. That's more work. And all of these added costs is going to break whatever profitability models they have. And it has the potential to tank the entire industry. And in my mind, good. But Disney doesn't want that to happen. They are going to want a settlement on this. I don't know what settlement structure they think they can get, though, that won't break it. Because the honest truth is, to properly enforce copyright protections, even as they currently exist, these things simply shouldn't exist. They shouldn't. Like, there is no legal way to justify the massive amounts of copyright violation that these things do by their very existence. So I don't know what Disney's hoping for in a settlement. Probably an agreement of very specific, like I'll betcha that in a settlement they would either want to take control of a portion of the company, or failing that, they might want to be able to, and them specifically, because that's the nature of a settlement. Because a precedent means it now applies to everybody. A settlement is just for this case. They might be trying to get a settlement where they get, a portion, some kind of payout for every time a generation is done through the system that is of one of their characters. So it might be something along those lines, or even just like the banning of certain stuff, like not allowing for AI generation of sexually explicit material using their characters. Because yeah, that definitely happens a lot. But I don't know how realistic even a goal like that would be. Again, I'm not entirely sure if there's an end goal that will actually make Disney happy, which is kind of why I think they're filing the lawsuit. They're between a rock and a hard place. There is no version of reality that is exactly what they want, where they get all the benefits of AI, but none of the drawbacks of having their copyrighted material scraped and repurposed and regurgitated. They can't have both. And so now they're going to court to try and figure out how to get as close to having both as they can. I don't know how that's going to work, though. I would be very surprised if this gets all the way to an actual courtroom in front of a jury or a judge makes a ruling or anything like that. I'd be very, very surprised because the stakes are too high for both sides. And I would say odds favor Disney and Universal on this way more than Midjourney. But, Midjourney can't afford to lose because that breaks their entire business model. And how they build this thing, and Disney and Universal can't afford to lose because it destroys copyright protection if they do. So I don't think either party wants this to go to court, but at the same time, I don't know what kind of agreement they could reach that doesn't involve in some way damaging Midjourney so much that it just goes away. Then again, like maybe the CEO will be happy to just, sell it for parts to the other AI companies. I mean, who knows? Who knows with these things? But I will be keeping an eye on this because it has the potential to shake up a lot of stuff because legislators are dragging their damn feet. They're not doing anything about this. And a court precedent would be a lot in either direction. Could be really good, could be really terrible, and we're probably not going to get one. But I did find it really fascinating to think about why these companies, why this AI company, why now? Because the whole thing has kind of been a standoff for a bit. Because companies like Disney, as I said, they want this tech, but they want it for them. And if it's allowed to continue to exist the way that it has, anybody can use it for what they're going to use it for and do it with their characters. And it's getting good enough and it's been going long enough that it's obvious that legislation isn't going to step in. These companies aren't going to reel it in. They're going to do as much as they can get away with until somebody pushes back. And Disney and Universal finally went, okay, wait, hold on a second. And now they're pushing back. We'll see what happens. It feels a little gross to kind of be rooting for Disney in this because, again, like, don't mistake them for the good guys. They want this stuff too. They just don't want it as much of a free-for-all as it currently is. Whereas my position is this tech shouldn't exist. There's no ethical use of it for specifically generative AI. I'm not going to say for every single form of AI that exists, but definitely the generative stuff that generates writing and images and video. There is no ethical argument you can make for me. It is an unethical thing that shouldn't exist. Burn it to the ground right now. And I won't get what I want, but I am going to keep an eye out to see if I can get at least a spark. If we're not going to burn it to the ground, can we at least singe it a little? Got to keep an eye out for that. What are your thoughts on this? Whatever your thoughts are, keeping in mind, I'm not a lawyer, so my understanding of the legal system, I may have made some mistakes. I have usually done okay. I haven't had too many lawyers, at least when I've talked about U.S. Court filings and the like, tell me that I am completely wrong about stuff, partially because I tend to limit my my suppositions and my guesses to stuff that I'm pretty dang confident about, but regardless, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. And if you'd supported me there, you would have seen this video a week ago. And it wouldn't have been quite as late. It would have been more topical. But whatever your thoughts are. I did that already. Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about, oh crap, I'm in a loop. I am AI. It's stuttering. No, it's not. Don't worry about any of that. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now it's time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Quite Bearish, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casper, Dave Hall, Andre, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Iron, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. We have a new little guy here under my hair. That's Satyr. So yes, he can now join in the distraction chorus as I try to read names. Thanks, guys. Welcome to the family.